Kia ora tātou, welcome to Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Tony Johnson, your host this week, coming, well, not so much off the bench, probably the wider training group to host this program, in which we're looking forward to a fascinating 3 weeks of international rugby. Later on in the show, we're going to introduce you to the winner of our Dream Team competition, but right now it's to our regular panellists, Tēnā korua, James Parsons, Bryn Hall. Bryn, you first. Late scratching last week. Presume the celebrations were good, but how did that one feel for you?
Hey TJ, welcome, mate. It's awesome to have you on the show, mate. Look, it was it was in a big couple of days, if I've been honest. There was. I think I was probably almost missed the bus. Actually, I think we had a 7:30 bus roll call, and I set my alarm for 7:45 and almost missed it. But thankfully, my mate Sam Whitelock helped me out, and luckily I packed my bags and I got on the bus, and then going to the airport was great and seeing our fans and supporters, and then having a few with the boys before they all dispersed to the All Blacks and Maori camps. But personally, TJ, it was an awesome night. I think the kind of way that we played and the kind of occasion that it was. I watched the podcast last week and heard Jipper and Joey talk about it. But for me personally, it was a great experience to be able to get that win up there. It was probably one of the most clinical and complete performances we've had in my time there, and I guess with all the marbles on the line, it was a great way to go out and against a pretty exciting Blues team that had a great season, and to be able to get that result up in Auckland was pretty satisfying.
And as it transpires, your last game for the Crusaders for a bit.
Yeah, it was. Obviously, yourself, TJ, was the first guy to talk about that. So, but yeah, it is. It's my last game, and like I said, it was a great way to go out. Started my career at Eden Park playing against the Crusaders, funnily enough, and then it's come full circle 10 years later to play the Blues in a final. I couldn't have wished for a better way to go out and to be able to get the result. Most importantly, TJ, didn't want to play like a dud or have a bad game, and just to be able to get the job done with all the pressure that was on us, and I guess the expectation from us as well individually and as a group, and I guess our supporters back home.
Yeah. Okay, we've given him his moment in the spotlight there, Jipper.
I was going to say, his standards have got sloppy now. He's signed in Japan. You would never have missed a bus had you re-signed for the next year. There's no way you would have needed anyone helping you to get the bus. You're normally there half an hour early.
Yeah, I think, yes. Unfortunately, Jeff, I had one of those moments where
sloppy, mate. Sloppy.
Yeah, it is. But I couldn't let it go, mate. It was just a great game. And
it was.
Like that. It was.
You played outstanding too.
Too few many lemonades.
It was a great performance. Well, Ireland are here, and it's great that it's, they're not just here for 1 or 2 test matches, 3 test matches, 2 against the Maori All Blacks. So it feels more like a bit of a mini tour, which got to be a good thing.
Yeah, it's sort of like, not obviously to the extent of a Lions tour, but having these midweek fixtures is so exciting. Also, I'm quite excited. So normally you'd probably expect the midweek fixtures to probably come in the second week and the third, but to have this little warm-up just to set things up for the weekend, and a 40-man squad, there are going to be players that will have to back up for Saturday. So I think everyone's excited about it. I think the players involved, both sides, are really excited about it. But as a fan, to get footy on a Wednesday is exciting for me, but to get footy of this calibre on a Wednesday and then on a Saturday is really exciting.
I suppose the big news is that COVID has hit the All Blacks, and we've got 2 or 3 members of the coaching staff down, including Ian Foster, and initial reports say Jack Goodhue and David Havili out, which is really bad news for 2 guys who were outstanding towards the end of Super Rugby. But Bryn, you've been in this situation over the last couple of years. How will they be handling this outbreak? How will they be managing it in the lead up to the test?
Yeah, I think we've been pretty accustomed to these COVID kind of situations for almost 2 years now. And, for us personally at the Crusaders, we went through that. We went to the tour of Australia. I think, look, we had to fly guys in that hadn't even played for us, and, them getting them up to speed with what we were doing in our plays and that. But, thankfully for the All Blacks, there's bigger squads. And so, to be honest, I just heard from Brad Moore in his interview not too long ago that they'll just continue as usual. Sorry, and being able to get the week right, because rugby doesn't stop. They've got a test match on Saturday, and they've got a big enough squad to be able to choose from. Hopefully, it just doesn't spread anymore when they're for the fact that we can't afford possibly to have any more midfielders that catch it, because we've already got 2 that are gone. But I can imagine that more so the senior leaders in that group will be driving a lot more, even though there are a few coaches that are out. But they would have prepared for it. They were prepared for an outbreak, and wouldn't be. They wouldn't think that it's something they did not prepare for. They would have prepared for it, and so it's not great preparation, but again, there's a big enough squad there for them to be able to choose a squad and a formidable squad coming into Saturday for a test match against Ireland.
And interestingly, it brings Joe Schmidt into the mix. Now, he was probably going to be there. Officially doesn't start until after this, but I'm sure he was going to be there in some capacity. But that just adds a little bit of intrigue to it too, doesn't it?
A little bit of tension. Creates a little bit more tension. It's something for us to talk about, TJ. But I think as well, like Bryn said, they would have planned for it, but I don't think it would fluster players and management anymore because it has been around for a while. I think previously had it, not been COVID and had been a couple of injuries that took players out this close, it could create a lot of disruption and anxiety within the group. But because COVID's been around, there's a lot of protocols in place in terms of their preparation and players having to be ready to go the day of the game, even if they haven't trained. It's not as a big a deal as it probably would have been previously.
Well, look, we'll talk about the All Blacks soon, guys, but I want to talk about Ireland because this is a team, traditionally we've always enjoyed having the Irish around, we've always enjoyed watching them play. Their fans, of course, are great, but this is a different story now, Ireland, particularly in the last few years. And I think one of the things that really strikes you about this Ireland team is the way they have evolved as a team, the way their playing style has evolved, and, that blueprint that Joe Schmidt probably was instrumental in, the way they've taken their game on and developed it under Andy Farrell.
I think it's their skill set 1 to 15. We've waxed lyrical about both props and Porter and Furlong, and just their ability to have that interplay, support lines, running lines, and it's that consistent discipline to stay within their systems. You look back at that Japanese fixture they played at home on the end of your tour, or our end of your tour, Japanese end of your tour. Mate, some of the structures within that and the option taking to create space and put players is where they've evolved the most, I think, in terms of their attacking structure. And it started under Joe, but I do think it's been, pushed on. And then we know what they bank on is their physicality. Whenever they've beaten the All Blacks, they have won the battle up front and they have not let them get that gain line attacking ball that they need to get their game going. So I think those are 2 areas that they know that they'll have to deliver if they're going to do something special here in New Zealand.
And we've got to give credit in the right places here, Bryn. I mean, they're not great because they have 2 or 3 Kiwis in the side, but obviously as New Zealanders, we're going to be looking at Bundy Aki, James Lowe, and in particular Jamison Gibson Park. And this is quite a story, because we saw him as a promising player, but since he's gone to Ireland, I mean, what has impressed you about the way he's grown and developed his game?
Glad you brought that up, TJ, because I was just going to jump on the back of how Ireland's been so successful, because they've had Conor Murray for a very long time, who's done great things around his game management, has a good pass, has been able to have his kicking game that was so influential during that Lions series and even through his duration of his career. But I think Jamison's taken that Ireland team to another level. And more so what you're talking about with what Jip said when it comes to the collision area and the breakdown, because they're so efficient in their breakdown with the ball placement, again, that ball set really quickly, it's just open for the likes of Jamison and being able to speed up that player. And what he does really well is that he snipes. And so he chooses the right times that he snipes. So his first thing is to obviously get the ball out, which you need as a halfback. And you look at the test matches that they've been successful, that ball is on a platter and it's out within 3 seconds. And so when you've got ability for a halfback to do that, it gives the likes of Sexton, Arkey and their forward players the opportunity to be able to play at the line with more time due to the fact that Jamison gets it out a lot quicker. And then I think it's just been him evolving through his time in Ireland. He went over there, you talked about it, TJ, that, he had promised him, there's a lot of hype around Jamo with his ability to be able to play and his time at Gisborne Boys and coming through that Blues system. But he's taken this game to another level. And I guess that shows the level of where Ireland are in their kind of rugby in their domestic game and how much they've been able to influence and come into a test level, because he's grown tremendously, not only around his skill set and his passing, but his kicking game as well. It probably wasn't a strength of his when he was in New Zealand, but now for Ireland, when he's been in Ireland, his contestable game and his long kicking game has made him, arguably, I think, that's one of the top 3 halfbacks in the world.
Okay. Well, they've done a lot in recent times, Ireland, including beating the All Blacks 3 out of the last 5 times that they've played them. There's a couple of things they have yet to do. One of them, it's a bit of a hump for them to get over in future, and that's to get past the quarterfinals of a World Cup. It's almost inexplicable. They haven't done that. They haven't won in New Zealand So I guess that's the big challenge, but you could hardly find a tougher place to start than Eden Park.
No, and I think like Andy Farrell's made it really clear with every sort of media session he's had is this is the start of their World Cup campaign, and it's about building towards that, and no better, springboard. If they can get it right on this, the belief for them to going into France 2023 will give them the ability to, probably knock off that hurdle. But like you say, if they can knock off this hurdle, winning in New Zealand, and I think they've got 5 guys that were here 10 years ago. I think it's Healy, Omani, Sexton, Murray and Earls. And I think drawing on that experience will be key for this squad. Not giving them the demons, giving them what they did well that Christchurch week, what put them in the race to nearly, without that drop goal, win here as well. And I think if they can, sort of have that ability, and we speak about Jamison and the growth of his game, and, speaking with Issa Nathewa, what they have at Leinster and the role that Sexton plays, I think he's been massive in terms of Jamison's development and his all-round game as well. So the skipper is going to play a vital role in them getting it right this tour.
I think one thing as well, let's not forget about Andy Farrell when he came here for the British and Irish Lions series. Very similar when they came down under here, thinking that they wanted to be the best test team in the world. And so they've got, obviously, he's got blueprints and thinking that what they think they can do as a team at that time with the British and Irish Lions to get that result, even though it was a tied series. They would have probably seen it as a win. And then so those kind of learnings of being able to say, yep, we've done that in the British and Irish Lions. Andy Farrell's a defensive coach. Now he's the head coach. But I think, let's not forget about his time or what he was able to do in New Zealand in 2017. And so being able to have a footprint and understanding what that will look like when they come to New Zealand and play in a similar format of 3 tests for our Series 1.
I mean, he has been around the block, Andy Farrell. I mean, he was a great rugby league player, successful transition to rugby, and now coaching, as you say, Bryn, stepping up into that role. I saw the media stand-up that he did over at Onewa Domain, and he, to me, looked relaxed. He looked confident. He looked happy to be here, looked happy to be facing this challenge. And if all that sort of thing can rub off on his team, Bryn, that sets us up for a fascinating 3 weeks, doesn't it?
Oh, I think it does, and they should feel confident. I think with the level of rugby that they are playing, not only against the All Blacks, they've had a successful couple of games to get them to be able to get those wins in his time there. But look at the Six Nations and the kind of level that they've been playing there. So they've been playing at a high level throughout the Six Nations and during that Northern Hemisphere tour as well. When we came up, the All Blacks, South Africa, and Australia came up. So why would you not feel confident? And so I think for them, it's a great opportunity. I think they'll be thinking in that group, what an opportunity to come down here, test themselves, and they should be confident because they're playing a brand of footy that put us under a lot of pressure. And they would have seen that and thinking for the All Blacks, it's their job to see can they rectify those things that they failed against the Irish and the French in that Northern Hemisphere tour. So I'll take a lot of confidence of that. It'll just be interesting to see, I guess, the tinkers, have they made tinkers in their game that was so successful against the All Blacks, because I can imagine that group would have a massive growth mindset and thinking they're not a finished product. Yes, they're playing at a very high level, but how do they keep continuing to get better, knowing that the 2023 World Cup isn't this year, but it's next year moving forward.
And perhaps just one issue that they face, Jipper. I mean, they have a long season, 39 weeks that they play. For some of them, it's been a few weeks since they had a game. Leinster kind of fell away a little bit towards the end of the United Championship. I mean, do you think there's any worries there for them?
Well, I don't think there's worries, but it's not a one-off test. Like, it is a tour, and I think they have to be mindful whatever happens this Saturday doesn't dictate the rest of the tour. It doesn't put you in a false sense of security if you win, but it also isn't the end of it if they can get things right for the following. So I think they've just got to target it week by week, and that's where their senior players. And you speak about Andy Farrell's relaxed nature. I think it's because a lot of successful, hard-nosed, high-standard head coaches are defence coaches, and the old adage of defence wins championships still runs true, and it's no different at Test match footy. And he clearly believes he's got the blueprint of something that can do the job if he's portraying that. And sometimes it's fake it till you make it, and so it does filter through your squad. But either way, it's filtering through the squad.
Well, let's take a look at the All Blacks now, guys. 3 Test series against Ireland, and let's not forget that is followed soon after by 2 Test matches in South Africa. So that's actually a pretty tough opening schedule to the international program. How important for this coaching staff to get a run going, to silence some critics maybe, and start building some momentum towards the World Cup in those opening games?
I think it's important in the sense that I spoke about Islanders saying this is their World Cup, their plan towards the World Cup. It's no different for us. I think, the All Blacks should just embrace the challenge. So often we've heard over the years, we walk towards that challenge. We don't hide away. And I think that's the mindset. If they can take that mindset, win or lose, it keeps them on the target, on course. So, you can't, say they go 1-1 in South Africa and maybe lose this series at home. That doesn't mean the World Cup's dead and buried. So they've just got to make sure that it's how you react sometimes and how you prepare to react if it doesn't go our way.
There's probably two things that I'm looking forward to this kind of test series, and to see where the All Blacks can make the changes that they did, that they weren't able to get right in the Northern Hemisphere. And probably the first one is when we're at our best, it's the ability of Aaron Smith and our halfbacks to play at a high tempo. So the collision area and the breakdown, we've talked about it, Jip, a lot. We probably didn't get that right on the Northern Hemisphere tour. So, has there been enough work that's been able for the boys to be able to get that right? Because if we're able to play where we need to, that needs to be done consistently at a high percentage. Because the likes of Ireland and France, they're winning that contact area and being able to play on top of it, with the likes of DuPont, Jamison, Gibson Park, Sexton, and their kind of phase play shape that Ireland play really well against us. So that's the first thing that I'm really excited to see if we can get that right. And then the kicking game. I'm talking more so off being able to attack off kicking games. I think South Africa and the Irish and the French, when they want to, they can play that box kick and contestable game. And so it's how are we going to be able to attack and being able to get ourselves in a position to then be able to ask questions of the defence, because Ireland, France, all the South Africans, they've got a really good defensive setup with bringing line speed pressure, which we've heard a lot over the last 4 or 5 years. How can the All Blacks get better at being able to attack against defensive pressure? So those are the two areas that I'm looking forward to seeing if the All Blacks have made any changes, or they've been able to try and, ask questions of these teams, because in that Northern Hemisphere, that's probably two areas that I thought we didn't get right. And I'd like to think there'd be improvements coming this test series and then running forward to the Rugby Championship this year.
So much talk about the selections, and 2 or 3 key areas of the game. I mean, obviously, back three very well off for talent. That midfield, though, losing Havili and Goodhue, you'd think that at least one of them was going to be in the starting 15. Now they're both gone. That's something they're going to have to come around. Does this bring Roger Tuivasa-Sheck into the picture at all? How do you think they'll go there? Well,
I think they've probably got to look at the opposition and who's going to make the biggest impact. Not only, I suppose, attacking-wise, but defensively against Bundy and co. And it makes the decision a little bit harder, because they probably would have gone with Davey. After his performance in the final, he almost stormed and forced his way into that 12 jersey because he was so dominant. I think it does bring him into the frame, but it doesn't necessarily mean he starts. Quinn Tupaia had a really solid year statistically of getting over the gain line and being that, setting the phase, setting the platform past the gain line, so that you can bring guys like Aaron Smith, Beauden Barrett, Richie Mo'unga into the game flat and fast, and we can get our game going. So it's not a straight yes, Rogers starting, I don't think. They may go for someone that's been in the environment, take the pressure off, put him on the bench and inject him into the game late against tiring bodies where he could be a real threat.
Yeah, I think I've gone with the fact with Jack and Davey not being there. I had Davey starting at 12 and then Rico fitting into centre. But I think maybe seeing what we saw against the Crusaders with Rog, I think him coming off the bench in 23, with the fact that I think we probably need a midfielder to cover that 23 role. Having him come off the bench and, like you said, Jip, being able to influence the game at the back end of the game. And there's no rush, I feel, with Rog, especially in his first 3 or 4 test matches. He's in the environment, he'll be able to learn, especially as that pivotal role at 12, which is really important. And you have a guy like Quinn, who's played really well, had a great, introduction to All Black rugby last year, and played a couple of test matches, that being that French last game. So he'll be gaining a lot of experience through that, and then coming through the Super Rugby this year and being able to get that gain line, which I guess we've been wanting from a 12, and Quinn does that tremendously. So I'd go Quinn at 12 and have probably Rog in that 23 role coming on, for the fact that I think we're probably going to need a midfielder in that 23 role with Davey and Jack not being able to play the first test match.
What about the loose trio? Because there's so much talk about it. We've got 3 outstanding number 7s, Savia Papali'i and, of course, Sam Cane, who's the captain. and plus, other elements that you need from your loose trio. There's been talk of maybe all three of those guys starting, or do we need that big man, a big hard ball carrier in that mix?
I think there's a couple of elements to consider, and I think if we use the final, because it's the recent display of set-piece dominance that, basically won a big game, high-pressure game, and where, we maybe need to look at as good line-out options as well in that loose forward trio. It can't potentially be all sevens, because then you're relying heavily on, Whitelock and Retallick or Barrett, whoever they go with, as the two, but then it makes pretty easy reading for Ireland to marry up, as we saw with a Sam Whitelock doing that damage. So I think, the source needs to be a consideration. And, we talk about the breakdown and winning the breakdown both sides of the ball. What's going to enable us to do that? Are these, if we went for the 3-7, are they going to get us over the gain line like a Pitagas or an Akira Ioane can with ball in hand and have proven to do so? Obviously Pitagas at a level below, but, I think we all know that he's physically ready for test match footy. So there are a number of considerations to go into that, because if we don't get our set piece right, we can't get anyone else going. So our ability to win our own ball but set a strong platform at scrum time will be crucial in this, and it doesn't necessarily mean 3 X-factor explosive players. You've got to get that marriage right.
On that, Jip, sorry TJ.
Yeah, no, go for your
Just on that, around that, Jip, what do you think of having Scott Barrett possibly at 6?
Could potentially consider it with a bench role. I don't know. I think we're adding another confusion to it. They've picked loosies. I really think this year we've got to get really clear on we pick specialists. We've got to be able to give a guy one job and go nail it. Don't be across 2 or 3 jobs and then you don't quite get it right in another job. I just think that clarity, what it's like in preparation, that clarity of focus. Yes, you have to have the ability and a lens to another role that you potentially may play, but you've got to do your first job first, and I think that'll be crucial.
I think you used the word, you alluded to clarity there, and I think that's what everyone's looking for, aren't they? This 14 months out from the World Cup, they're looking for a clear picture here of the kind of game the All Blacks are looking to play, some clarity over, how certain players are used in what positions, and I think that's something that they'd be pretty keen to answer, wouldn't they? Isn't that now the time where we want to start seeing that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it is. And cohesion's a word that's been used a lot on this podcast. But I think it's pretty important. I think, Jip, you said maybe there's like 17 or 18 tests this year before we start the Rugby World Cup. So there's not a lot of time. And so being able to give guys opportunities, I think, there are going to be guys that are given opportunities. It's just being able to see if they can take them straight away, because you might not know when you're going to get another opportunity, especially in these big test matches where you need to be able to get the bulk of your squad that you're thinking are going to be pivotal players in that Rugby World Cup. So, I think consistency, I think we're going to see it a lot this year. Probably look at last year, we had a bigger squad, COVID, we're away from home, and so there's a little bit of being able to give guys opportunities, a little bit of time out from the World Cup. But I think this year, we're going to see a lot more consistent selections in pivotal positions, so they can start getting a run to the 2023 World Cup.
What discipline? There's been so much talk about yellow cards, red cards. We go into a situation, we've got a couple of Northern Hemisphere referees and Carl Dixon, Wayne Barnes taking control of the first 2, and I think Jaco Paper comes in to do the 3rd test in Dunedin. I guess that's another thing too. Penalties really cost them in that game in Dublin last year, for example. Yeah,
absolutely. But 3 very experienced refs, and if you're going to have, 3 senior refs, these guys are as good as it gets. So, and the one thing I like about all 3 of these refs is their ability to communicate their decision in the game. I don't know about you, Bryn, but when a ref just gives you the clear facts and the evidence, and they almost rattle through why they've got to the decision, it makes it really clear as a viewer to understand, but also for a player to understand. But I think we all know you've got to get your tackle height low. And there will be mitigating factors and stuff, but first things first, the focus has to be on a low tackle height. And that will alleviate 90% of the issues, and you won't bring the ref into it. I think, so often you hear from, coaches, throughout my years of playing is, don't bring them into it. You nail your stuff, you nail your job, and you'll give yourself the best ability to not get a yellow, red or a penalty. So I think I don't think it should be a nerve-wracking factor, because these are highly skilled athletes, the best in the world going at it, and should probably have the ability to adjust the best.
What I think is really great about what we've got coming up, though, and it's not just here in New Zealand, but in particular here, is that this has developed into a great rivalry, New Zealand and Ireland. And I was talking to one of my friends from the Irish media earlier on today, and he was listening to our commentary of the game last year and our reference to this great rivalry. He said, I never thought I would hear a New Zealander say that. That's exciting. We've already seen Eden Park packed for the Super Rugby final. Sellout crowd. I mean, it is an exciting start to the international season, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And I think, the best thing about a rivalry is you've got to win both sides. And so, you probably think the last 5-6 years, Ireland have been our bogey team because, they've had such success against us. But I think the best thing for us is that we've got them at home. And you know how formidable it is at home to be able for us as All Blacks to play in our own country. And knowing as well, I think that All Black group will be pretty motivated and driven, considering, there's probably a lot of messages around the world, and fair enough with how Ireland and how successful they have been, that, they can come down here and win a series. TJ, I don't know, you think about a decade ago, you're not thinking that Ireland are going to come down here and really contest for a series if it's three test matches. So I guess that's the improvement, I guess, where Ireland rugby is at the moment. It's fantastic for Ireland and for us as Kiwis, knowing that, this kind of June series, June and July, it's going to be a great test match, knowing what Ireland have done against us, and I guess the brand of rugby that they're playing. We've said time and time again how exciting it is to watch an Ireland team, and I'm really hoping that I know it's at the back end of their season, but I think any of those boys coming down here to have an opportunity to win a test series in New Zealand, not many teams from afar have done that. I think the last team to probably do it would have been England in 2003. It might have been TJ. The last time a Northern Hemisphere team came down here and won a series.
That was it was a one-off test in Wellington, wasn't it? I think you have to go back, really. You have to go back. I think the Springboks did it, but not a Northern Hemisphere team since probably France in 1994. Yeah. So, and that was the last time the All Blacks lost at Eden Park. What is it about Eden Park? You get the feeling that someone in the boardroom thought, righto, this is going to be a tough series. Let's start off at Eden Park.
Probably, but one thing I do want to emphasise is we're talking a hell of a lot about Ireland, and they're worthy of that chat, don't get me wrong, but just think about what's happening in that All Black camp. They're hearing a lot of challenge, a little bit of an underdog status, if we're honest, and they'll be looking to the pack to set the tone and rectify what didn't go right last year, and that excites me the most, is the thought of an All Black pack with a chip on its shoulder, a dogged approach all week, a few things not going to plan with COVID, to come out at Eden Park with that on the line, knowing that they have to set a platform. They have to win the collision areas to win this test match. I mean, it is just going to be an absolute doozy in terms of all those sort of traditional aspects of our game.
Okay, well, look, we're going to talk more about the Maori All Black games against Ireland. We're going to talk about the series elsewhere in the world, and in a moment we're going to meet our dream team winner. But just before we move on from the test series, guys, just sum up what you think you would like to see most from the All Blacks. What is the key to them getting ahead in the series against the Irish team at Eden Park this weekend?
Oh, I think I alluded to it earlier, TJ. The collision area and breakdown. When we're at our best, it's Aaron Smith and Finlay Chris with Folau. If they've been able to play on top of teams, and so if we can get that right, we'll probably see pictures of that. The All Black team that we're used to seeing with the likes of Richie Mwang and Bowden Barrett, whoever's sitting there. We haven't even talked about that. Who's going to be starting at 10? But getting those guys to be able to play in front and being able to make give the opposition to make decisions defensively. Because we're playing really quick ball and being able to play on the front foot. So Jipper set the tone and the challenge there, I guess, for that All Black pack, and knowing that if they can get that right, gives us the best opportunity to play some good rugby and get a result this test series.
Hey, mate, I'm quite happy to talk about number 10 if you want. I mean, okay, put yourself... Who are you going to go for? Are you going to go for your Crusaders teammate, or are you going to go for...
Of course he is.
Hey?
Oh, it's 50-50, TJ. I don't know how many times we've talked about it on this.
Off the fence, please.
Podcast. But I think you've got to be able to account for a final. And look, if you're going at that final between the Crusaders and the Blues, Richie outplayed Bodie. So, but different circumstances. We had the forward pack obviously got on the front foot and he was able to play his game on top of teams. But look, no different from Bodie when he gets that ball flat and hard and and the forwards are getting good growth ball for him, he can do the same. But that final's got to mean something, doesn't it? That's why you play those kind of games. It's a trial, theoretically, and that's why I'd pick Richie based on that play that game a fortnight ago.
It's a fair account of how you'd select it. Like the final, you're looking for players that can step up in the big game. But one thing I will say, and I harp on about it a lot, is when it all goes well, the 10 gets the praise, but it's actually the platform that's set up front. Bodie didn't get that platform. So, yes, the gloss gets taken off and they get put under the blowtorch a little bit more, but I don't think you can rip away Bodie's whole season because of one performance because they couldn't win their set-piece ball. It wasn't a poor performance, he just didn't get the opportunity to play.
And again, your key factors that the All Blacks need to get right if they're going to go ahead in the series?
I think it's just simplicity. Like, let's just go direct. Let's be direct early and then let the fancy stuff come late in the game. I think that's when we're always at our best. People are really clear in their role, specialist mindset, and if we can just keep it simple, which is, it's an old adage, but if we do stick with that and we win the collision era like Bryn talks about, the other stuff will happen naturally because we've got the players, we've got the skill set to do it, but we just got to take it to them first. They just got to go straight at them, at their biggest weapon, which is their pack.
Well, as you're well aware, we've been running a Dream Team competition on Aotearoa Rugby Pod where the fans vote for the players of the round. It all gets compiled into a Dream Team at the end of the competition. And we select a winner, the person who has got their team closest to the ultimate Dream Team as voted for by the fans throughout the course of Super Rugby Pacific. And I'm delighted to say that we have the winner with us, Jeff Burke from Hawke's Bay. Jeff, congratulations.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here. Thank you.
Well, tell us your strategy. I mean, did you pick the players that you thought were the best, or did you pick a team along the lines of, I think these are the guys everyone's going to vote for?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't try and second guess everyone else. That'd be a sort of even bigger disaster. But I tried to look and see what I thought was happening in the game. So not necessarily who was called in commentary, but all that sort of stuff that makes a success in a rugby game. So hitting rucks, clearing rucks, making tackles, and those kinds of things. So perhaps the less obvious things than the spectacular run, or obviously if it's a winger doing that. But yeah, just those kinds of things I tried to sort of pay attention to because I'm a bit of a rugby tragic, and so it's that kind of level of detail I'll watch and enjoy.
Interested to know, obviously a lot of chat around discipline throughout Super Rugby. Did that factor in to your selection? If there was a player getting a lot of cards or a lot of penalties, did you factor that in when selecting your team?
Yeah, I definitely paid attention to that, James, because that had such an impact on a team, and you would tend to see the same guys were getting cards. So I thought, therefore, that that took away from their impact on a game in a positive way. So yeah, I paid attention to that. That would influence my decision making for sure.
If you had to choose, obviously with Super Rugby Pacific, if there were three standouts that you found throughout the whole season, who were the three best players you had in the Super Rugby Pacific?
Ooh, yeah, okay, that's...
Bryn's good for a classic question really challenging without notice.
yeah, thanks. Okay, so like this one probably passes. Seems a little bit obvious. Yeah, but look, it's a bit obvious, but I thought Will Jordan, because of the positions he gets himself into, his reading of the game, and clearly within the Crusaders, he's got a license to move, because you would see him come up in the line and not necessarily get the ball, but he would stay up in the line, whereas you would think a fullback would drop back straight away. But obviously within your framework, there's a process where someone knows they need to drop back because Jordan's up in the line. But I thought his reading of the game was really outstanding, and his timing. So I'd go for him. And then loose forwards, I thought Dalton for the Blues was, again, great leadership, made real impact. So he stood out. And then actually some of those young tight forwards coming through. So they may not have stood out as the best players, but I've been feeling that we've been lacking in New Zealand and a little bit in the tight forwards and young guys coming through. So thinking particularly locks and the props. And I thought some of the young locks and props really sort of stood up this season, and I thought was really encouraging because there's some guys clearly coming through there who have got a lot of potential.
I'm just making a few notes here, just in case I'm on the judging for the
Well done, mate.
awards again. Of course,
Well
Jeff,
done,
you're from Hawke's Bay, but these guys are delighted to find out that originally you're a harbour man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, born and bred, went to school north of Harbour Bridge, and still support Harbour. I mean, I support Hawke's Bay as well. So it's difficult when those two are playing, but yeah, I love it. It's a great part of the world. But yeah.
Sounds like you think the game through, Jeff. Just give us your selection then for the first test. Bearing in mind that Goodhue, Havili are out with the COVID. Just quickly run through your starting 15 then.
Yeah, so the Goodhue one complicates it because I'd have had him in there. I think he's a very, very capable, organised player, doesn't make a lot of errors, makes tackles. So just to whip through the team. I think you start Smith, Fakatava on the bench, Bowden at first 5. I think probably try RTS. I would have put Goodhue at second 5 and Rico at centre. But I think if you've got that Blues combination, you've got 10, 12, 13. That sort of makes for good understanding between those guys. Caleb Clark, is he back from his hamstring? I have him on the left wing if he is. Will Jordan on right wing, Geordie at fullback, and then up front, Offa, Tokiahau at hooker, and Loosehead. Who got Loosehead? Actually, I'd be tempted to start someone like Aidan Ross, give him a go. Sort of he's in there because he's performed, so give him a crack. Whitelock and Retallick, and then Artie Saver at 8, Sam Kane at 7, and Kira at 6. So pretty traditional, but I guess it's the first test. You want to go with guys who've got experience, some familiarity with each other, such as that back row. I don't think you want to. I mean, I put in sort of a prop alternative, but I just think that's performance based, and you've got to get some exposure to these guys, and so that's the way I'd sort of approach it, I guess.
Pretty good team.
Yeah, mate, I like the way you think. You're obviously a real student of the game, and you had to be to get that dream team right. So congratulations on that, Jeff, and thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers, thanks guys. Look, really enjoy the show. Think you guys do a really great job. James, I think your analysis is brilliant. Really enjoy that. And I just wanted to say, Bryn, I thought the quality of your passing this year has been tremendous, and it hasn't really been called by anyone. So I just wanted to shout out. I thought some of your passing has been like Smith hitting Geordie in that French test. Just margin for error has been minimal, and you've executed. And anyway, I just wanted to sort of say that sort of live, mate, because I haven't heard anyone else sort of saying it. So yeah, well done. But thanks, guys. It's a great show. Really enjoy it.
Cheers, Jeff. Thank you, mate.
Well done, Jeff. All the best. Okay, that's Jeff Burke.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
From Hawke's Bay, who's the winner of our Dream Team competition from Super Rugby Pacific. Well, let's move on now to another subject that's very close to your heart. Bryn, the Maori All Blacks, you played for them, 8 times now, and it's brilliant. As James said before, we're going to start the tour off with a match between Ireland and the Maori All Blacks. What does it mean to have them involved in the tour to this degree? 2 games, almost like a mini-series.
Oh, mate, it's really important for Māori rugby. I think for us, for since my time that we've been there, since the British and Irish Lions, and this is no disrespect to our Pacific brothers, we love playing against the Fijians, the Samoans. Moana Pacifica was a great test match to be able to play in those kind of circumstances. But for a long time, we've been wanting to play against Tier 1 nations, and there's no better introduction to that than playing probably arguably one of the form teams in world rugby when it comes to international level. So I can imagine Clayton, Rog, and those senior leaders, they'll be that excited to be able to have an opportunity to be able to first and foremost express our brand, which is the Māori brand of being able to play with ball in air and being able to have that kind of X factor. And then being able to have 2 test matches, I think, is really important as well. Sometimes you can just have that one off, but for the fact that they get a double shot at it, it's going to be a great spectacle for those boys in that and for Māori rugby. And I think also I'm really looking forward to seeing a couple of individuals. You've obviously got co-captains between Perenara and Brad Weber, who I think are going to be invaluable for a lot of those young boys and understanding what it is in big test matches and what it's going to look like, especially having those performances against Ireland in the past. And then, I think a guy like Cullen Grace, arguably could have been in their All Blacks squad, but he gets the opportunity to be able to go at number 8. So I'm really looking forward to see how he goes. And even the new caps, you've talked around Ollie Norris, who I think has played great for the Chiefs this year and gets an opportunity to be able to test himself at the All Black level. And then a guy that's probably not a lot of New Zealand players, New Zealand fans know, a guy like Cameron Silfor from North Harbour gets an opportunity to start a test match for the Maori. So TJ, really looking forward to it and going to be down on the sideline, being able to get the atmosphere and what it's going to feel like, and being able to see hopefully the Maori have a really good 2 test matches and really test this Irish team, knowing that probably they're going to have probably not their first stringers and the other 40 players that are all involved there. Guys are going to be given opportunities to try and get their way into that three-match test series. So really looking forward to seeing how that series plays out as well.
It's an enviable record. I mean, it's a record that a lot of Tier 1 nations would love to have. Their strike rate against international opposition is quite phenomenal. They've played Ireland twice, have beaten them on both occasions, once there, once here. But as Bryn alluded to, there's a few players in that team, apart from the pride of playing for the Maori All Blacks, also got a little bit of a point to prove after missing out on the All Black squad.
Yeah, well, I suppose the 2 9s are the easy ones to pick up on, but I also think Josh Ioane, he had some great performances for the Chiefs, but did slip behind Bryn towards the latter part of that season. But I'm really excited for him to get back to this level and maybe make a little bit of a statement and where he wants to take his career moving forward, because he was outstanding when he got selected to make his All Black debut, and injuries and so forth have sort of slowed that progression. So I think a tour like this, off the back of the forward pack that Bryn's alluded to, being able to provide that platform and 2 experienced 9s like that is, and he's got that combination with Brad, but also having someone like TJ come on, and we just know how competitive and how he will not accept anything below perfection from himself first and foremost, but others around him will be great for someone like Josh.
Bryn mentioned Cullen Grace. I mean, he's a guy I would have had in my All Black team if I'd been picking it. But this is a special team in its own right. I mean, never mind the context in terms of relationship to the All Blacks. And I imagine, Bryn, the experience of building up to a match with the Maori All Blacks is quite unique.
Oh, it is, mate. It's special, and I know, especially being in Hamilton, you definitely get that Maori kind of feel when you're in camp. And I know, for the likes of Kelly, who is really going to enjoy that Maori, journey, because probably doesn't know a lot about himself. But I know, talking to him before he went, he was really interested and really wanted to be able to immerse himself into that culture and learn a little bit more about his Maori heritage, because Luke Crawford in the Maoris does a really good job around telling Maori stories and being able to connect for what that mindset's going to be for the next 2 weeks, and kind of an identity of what that'll look like for the 2 weeks. And it's always great to be able to connect with that, because you just feel a sense of belonging and a real deep care for your Maori ancestry, and that's what you do with that team when you're selected. Rugby is important, but being Maori and being able to do that on the big stage in front of a worldwide audience is really important. So again, I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of those men put on the Maori's jersey for the first time. But I think the experience of having TJ and being able to have Brad, it's going to be massive for that group, and knowing what the Irish are going to be bringing for those 2 test matches.
What about elsewhere? Look across the Tasman. You don't have to look very far to something that's extremely mouth-watering. England against Australia. And of course, the first 2 words that come to mind when you look ahead to the series are Eddie and Jones. I mean, that's a fascinating subplot, that is. Well,
he's going to poke a few bears, isn't he, in the lead up, and probably look to take the pressure off a side that comes off a loss against the Barbarians that they probably wouldn't have been expecting, certainly not to the level. And, for the most part of that game, they played against the Barbarian side with 14 men. So I think, and it wasn't a weakened side either. These were experienced internationals and a lot of frontline players that were playing for England in this game. And yes, I know it's a festival fixture, but you never go out on that field planning to lose and lose to that amount. So it's a double-edged sword for them. It might light a fire and just make them sharpen their focus a little bit in their preparation. but also it'll let the Wallabies know that probably they were coming down as favourites. But I think that's been evened up after that result last weekend.
Yeah, I think even Eddie Jones talked about in this press match interview, was saying, we're really happy with a few things we wanted to try and do for this test match against the Barbarians. So he'll be able to word things really well, like Eddie does. He's got a great way to be able to take the pressure off his team, and knowing that when he's coming to Australia, there'll be a lot of media requests for Eddie, and he'll take the pressure off that group to be able to get prepared, ready for a test series. That thinking before that Barbarians result, we're thinking that England would be the favourites in going there. But I'm really interested to see how this Australian team goes as well. I think they made a lot of improvements in the back end of that rugby championship that we talked around, their play, of how they were able to make better decisions without the ball and not playing too much. And so I'm hoping to see a continuation of seeing how they can play there. And I think I look at their squad, it looks pretty settled, Jip. I think with the improvements that they made in the Northern Hemisphere and the back end of that rugby championship, they'll be quietly confident in knowing that David Rennie's had another year to be able to instill what he wants into that group. So I wouldn't be surprised if, Australia end up winning that series. But it'd be interesting to see what you think around that, Jip, because I've been pretty impressed with Australia, and they're got a pretty good squad that I think they've made massive leaps and bounds in the last 12 months.
Yeah, look, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if they won it. Absolutely not. And you say there is a settled team, and a team that's used to the style and the demands of Dave Rennie. The only concern I'd have off the back of last year is they did play so well. I think Quaid led them to 5 test match wins in that rugby championship. He departed the side, and so did Samu Karevi, and they almost fell off the rails a little bit on the end of year tour. And the only reason I bring that up is I know those players are back, and that's great, and they'll put the people around them, but you don't want to be so reliant. Creating that depth and being so reliant on 2 individuals is the only probably concern. And there will be some demons that those 2, and it might have happened even if they did go on, because it was a hard end of year tour, but the perception is those 2 individuals removed, the other players didn't step up and allow them to continue on that momentum and that belief they instilled in everyone else, not only themselves, that they were back. So I think that'll be interesting with what selection they go with. Obviously Karevi picks himself, but do they stick with Quaid? Or is it a James O'Connor coming back from injury, and he didn't have much game time last year? Or is it the young fella? I think it'll be O'Connor or Quaid. If you're going on performance and what's being shown at that level, Quaid's probably got the inside running.
I suppose the downside is that they've lost Tupou, and they lose a lot with him not playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, throughout this whole podcast, we've talked about winning collisions, getting across the game line, being dominant in defence is sort of key areas for success. And he's a guy that can do it flat-footed, which a lot of people can't do. Like, they need to get their timing right, running onto the ball, but he's got great feet, he gets low to the ground, and he's got that ability to keep his legs underneath him, that he's always, obviously in control of the tackle or in control of his carry. So I think, he'll be a big loss in terms of that attacking sense, but I think they've got enough backup in terms of still being able to have that dominance at set piece that they'll be looking for.
I have to say, I'm looking forward to that series almost as much as the All Blacks against Ireland. Not quite, but it'll be good. What about the Springboks against Wales? I mean, the Boks, powerful, defending World Cup holders. Wales, perhaps, signs that things aren't all that well in Wales at the moment.
Yeah, I think, the South Africans probably, if I'm just from afar thinking, just with how Wales went in that Northern Hemisphere and the kind of the Six Nations and kind of where they are at the moment, I'll be expecting a 3-0 kind of series win for the Springboks. And look, that's no disrespect to Wales, and look, they could have a fire burning in them around, they're going to be the underdogs. And I know Wayne Pivac and how he is as a person who'll be able to word things right to be able to hopefully instill a bit of belief into that squad. But look, I just think with how the South Africans and how well they've gone in that Northern Hemisphere rugby as well, with their domestic sides, I think, having those guys play at that kind of level and understanding against the Northern Hemisphere teams and being able to play that kind of rugby week in and week out, it's going to set them up pretty well, because, usually when you're in New Zealand, a Southern Hemisphere team, you're going up to the Northern Hemisphere, you don't really play them in that kind of style. But look, their domestic sides have been pretty used to that the whole year and have had a lot of success. So look, I expect it's a pretty strong, formidable South African team, and I think they'll want to be able to build their second year, being able to play meaningful test match, obviously having a long time with COVID and not playing, but probably going to see a little bit more of a better side from where we did last year, and they'll continue to keep getting better. And I'm expecting to probably see a 3-0 whitewash for that series.
I'm just interested to see how the South Africans play it. Do they continue in the same vein? They don't care what anyone thinks about the way they play. Do they keep going that way because it works for them?
Oh, absolutely. I think they will. There'll be some evolution. There's a bit of young talent coming through that's got a bit of X factor about them. Through the Stormers and Sharks. So the biggest thing that people focus on is they're picking players all over the globe, but I think they've proven they've got that right somehow. Before the Lions, it was sort of talk about they don't have that added bonus of having that group. They are coming from multiple parts of the world, but I think they're so used to it. They all hit the ground running, and I think it's best in that situation to go to what go to the style of play that works for you. But like any good team, there has to be some evolution of your game, otherwise it'll eventually get shut down at international rugby. So there has to be aspects of that.
Because France... sorry, mate, yeah.
Sorry, TJ, just to go on with the South Africans, I think probably two things that I saw that in that kind of rugby championship. Look, we know that their kicking game and their aerial game is, where they put teams under a lot of pressure, but probably two areas where I thought they could improve. When they did get to that 22 or attacking zone against New Zealand, they ended up playing a lot and they were able to ask questions and they weren't kicking the ball a lot. So I think when they kind of get down there in attacking zone, I don't think they're going to shy away from that kicking game and being able to box kick off after Clerk, Pollard, and being able to play not as much rugby in their defensive half, not when they're in the attacking zone. But I think when they get there, I think it's been able to see the phase play shape and being able to square defenders up, because I think, I guess early in the series, in the rugby championship, there were opportunities when there was 5-on-4s or 4-on-3s and being able to fix people to the edge. And remember us talking about it, if they can be able to get that square hands and be able to fix people on the edge, then I think that marrying up with the balance of being able to kick the ball away and being able to defensively put teams under pressure. But when they do get into that attacking zone, just being able to attack a little bit more better in the execution. We talk around Ireland and being able to see their phase play shape and how much questions they do ask. But I think for the South Africans, it's really simple around square hands, being able to fix people and put your likes of your Mopepe and your Colby and being able to put those guys away and giving them opportunities one-on-one or even with space in front of them to be able to try and score tries and get over the advantage line that way as well.
Bruno, I think the biggest adjustment they made in the test they won against the All Blacks in the Rugby Championship is their forwards went to that simple mindset of just getting around the corner and carrying direct, which actually committed defences in, which enabled it easier for them to get that, fixing players and work that ball to the edge. And it's their biggest weapon. And when they go to it in the 22 and they roll up their sleeves, those big boys, you have to put two, sometimes three onto them. Marks and co will drag you over the line if you don't. So that simple mindset of just getting around the corner in 22 for their big boys is so key to enabling them to expose them on the edge.
Yeah, simple, but so effective. Yeah. France, they're going to be in Japan, which I'm sure they'll enjoy. France just looks so good. And the other series that we're looking forward to, the Pacific Nations Cup. And, I mean, for example, the Tongan team, the strength that suddenly they have in that squad, and we've got to think about there's a World Cup qualifying spot. This is something to look forward to as well. Tonga are a team worth watching.
Oh, they are. And I think it's so great to see. We probably saw scenes last year when the Tongans were playing against the All Blacks, and it was unfortunate for the kind of level of depth they had at that time, not being able to have the likes of the Northern Hemisphere players or being able to choose just through the eligibility rules that weren't there at the time. But it's so great for Tongan rugby, and not even the Tongans as well, but the Samoans, the Fijians, having the guys of we've talked around Seta Tamanivalu, how much he's going to be able to add to Fiji. The Samoan players like Jordan Taufua, being able to come back into that environment. The Tongan team, Malakai Fekitoa has been there, went through that sevens kind of being able to play back for Tonga through that kind of campaign. But it's great for Pacific Islander rugby because I think for a long time we've been kind of harping on and say we'd love to see these guys who can still play international rugby, but they've just played for New Zealand or other countries around the world earlier in their career. And so for them to be able to play for their second nation or their home nation, it's only going to add to be able to strengthen those Pacific Islander nations and being able to have them come to the 2023 World Cup and moving forward to play meaningful test matches and be competitive, which I think what we've wanted to see TJ and Jip, them be able to be competitive and have players that can play for them and be able to influence them at the international level.
I think it's going to be hard to pick. Like, I was looking at the two games, obviously, like Fiji-Tonga, you can't expect it all to just turn around overnight. You know, these players are awesome individuals, but you've got to build a program around them that works for everyone involved, you know, for the factors that we've spoken about earlier. And then with the Fiji, obviously with the Fiji and Drua spending a lot of time together, there is a bulk of players that are used to each other, have spent a lot of time, with some additions like Tamani Valu. So you'd have to say Fiji probably go in as favourites. I know there are a lot of big names in that Tongan side, but it's not going to be fixed overnight. So I'm really interested in watching that one. And then the Aussie A and the Samoa game, I think Australia A, again, for that sort of ability of played with each other, they know each other, they've got a lot of experience at that higher level, may be too good for Samoa as well.
But it's a brilliant development. I mean, you just look through the names, and you mentioned some of them, you know, Falau, Fekitoa, Jordan Taufua, you know, coming into the mix. Look, it makes for what's going to be, I think, some sensational rugby over the next few weeks.
Oh, and great for the pathway and development for a lot of guys that haven't had the experience of these players and the heights they've reached, to be able to pass that on at this level. Then they'll be able to, you know, like, it does create a flow through of that pathway, which is exciting for the strength of world rugby, because we know that when it's all tight, when competitions are a lot tighter and you don't know who's going to win or lose, it creates interest, which brings people, you know, bums on seats, which makes the whole system work. So it's great for the world game.
Well, so much to look forward to over the next 2 or 3 weeks, guys. I look forward to seeing you break it all down. Thanks for having me.
Mate, it's a pleasure.
Mate. And before we go, mate, any chance you might turn... I see the mighty Coat, North Coat, 4th on the table, some team called Takapuna. I've heard of them vaguely before. Any chance you might turn out for the Coat before you head off?
Oh, I actually got a text message from my coach, actually, if I was able to come back and play, but I'm not too sure yet. I think I might get back home, actually. I'm still in Christchurch, but I've got to get back home and obviously say goodbye to friends and family, and might see if I can jump on the bench possibly. Last thing I want to do is a Matt Duffy or Bryn Gatlin and come on and starting and take away some poor guys, all hard work throughout the year, which they tend to do at Takapuna.
Or is it the insurance bill? I don't know. I don't know. Is it the insurance bill or is it that?
That's right.
Don't paint yourself pretty, mate. Don't paint yourself pretty, mate.
And don't do anything.
Gatlin's been in 3 finals for Takapuna and has lost them all. You know, I should have started their 10 they've had there. So
Listen to it.
We'll see.
We'll see,
TJ.
He's on his way out of the game. He's late to buses. He's now calling players out. Oh my gosh.
Okay, that's it, fellas. Thanks very much. It's been a great pleasure being with you.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, TJ.
Okay, that's it for this week's edition of Aotearoa Rugby Pod. It has been a great pleasure to step in off the bench. I'm sure someone who knows a lot more about what they're doing will be back in charge next week. We'll see you then.